Most of this video has already been posted as part of the FX30 review. What's new is, well, it's this introduction. I want to add a couple of things and explain why I wanted to put it out as a separate video. For people not interested in FX30, they may not have wanted to watch this video, but I think it's very important for many Sony Alpha users to watch this so they understand what it is that this is about. This is not complaining, this is not whining, this is requesting, this is suggesting, this is asking, this is almost begging that Sony take on board these suggestions when it comes to adding firmware to their top-end cameras. Now, Sony do update firmware in their cameras. It's not like they've never done it before. They added the version 2 firmware to the FX3 not that long ago. On the day that the FX3 came out, they brought out firmware for the Alpha 7S3 to give it a Cinetone, which was really the major thing that the FX3 had over it at that time. And there's loads of other things, like the Alpha 1 was given not that long ago 422 8K, whereas before it was 420. And we've had animal eye autofocus for stills added into older cameras, like the A7 IV, maybe going back further, which didn't have them initially. But that's the key thing, didn't have them initially. Some people have said in comments to the original video is, well, you know what the camera had when you bought it, so why are you complaining? Not complaining. I'm requesting and asking, but I knew exactly what the camera was capable of and what the features were, and I don't expect them to add everything that comes out into older cameras. Of course not. But there are certain things, which is basically what this video is, which I feel should be added to their three most expensive cameras, which is the Alpha 1, the FX3, the Alpha 7S3. I'm not counting this camera here, which is the Alpha 7R5, because it has everything, because it's the newest camera. Does it have the best of everything else though? Absolutely not. The cynical amongst you are going to go, well, they just want you to buy the newer version of the camera when it comes out. Well, that is entirely possible. I don't know. I certainly hope not. I mean, for new versions of these cameras to come out, they would have to have something pretty big and important to justify a whole new camera, because they're pretty damn good as they are. Well, it's entirely possible, of course, but things I'm asking for here certainly aren't enough to justify a whole new camera. And with today's economic climate and situation that a lot of people are facing, then we want to hold on to our investments as long as possible, and these are investments. And it's not just for people who already have these cameras, it's for people who are looking into buying Sony cameras, buying into the system. If they see that the cameras aren't being updated as much as they should be, especially compared to other cameras which are getting good, solid, big improvements, especially Panasonic cameras, but others too, then they're going to go, I'm not sure if I really want to invest into these because I don't want to have to keep buying bodies to get these new things. I'd like this camera to last a fairly decent amount of time because they are really good cameras. So this is not complaining. This is just hoping that Sony take this on board and are able to act on it in some way. And if it's not possible due to hardware, then please tell us. If it is possible, then please do it and put in the resources that are needed to push these cameras up to spec, have these features which the low-end cameras have that the higher-end ones really should. So yeah, this video is done out of love for Sony. It's most definitely not done out of hate. So this is more or less the end of the FX30 review. As you can tell, it's been a pretty positive one. So what is all the rest of this time here? And where's the rant? Well, here it is. The FX30 has more advanced features in it than the almost twice as expensive FX3. And these are software features. I'm not talking about any hardware features. These are things which could be put in it. The animal eye autofocus, the focus breathing, which is so important. These are key things which are missing from it. And they shouldn't be missing from it. They should be in there. And this brings me on to the other cameras that these should be in. And let's start with the flagship camera, the Alpha 1. The most expensive mirrorless camera that they make, and I love it. It's my favorite camera. Let me just concentrate on the animal eye autofocus part, because there's something about this which has really frustrated me. I've not been able to get a straight answer from Sony, an answer at all, about this simple question. And that is, why do we have the option to select animal eye autofocus in video if it doesn't work in these cameras like the Alpha 1 and the Alpha 7S3? It's in there. Look at the icon, because it shows that this is a video feature. A feature that is just stills will have just a camera icon, and one is just video will just have the little film icon. One that has both means it works in both, but it doesn't. But it's been there ever since day one of the Alpha 7S3. Why? For me, it just felt like it's there in anticipation of it being added with firmware. But we're talking, getting on to really 2.5 years since that camera came out, and not a sign of it. Why? Why is it so hard to add this feature in there? A precedent has already been set about updating cameras to give this feature to them, because 2 cameras have been updated and now have it. But we're not talking the Alpha 7S3 or the Alpha 1, we're talking the Alpha 7C and the ZV-E10 of all cameras. They've received firmware update to give it animal eye autofocus, but not the flagship and not the Alpha 7S3. I don't understand why. There is no logic to that. Is there? The AF assist function that was added in the version 2 firmware for the FX3 and is in all subsequent cameras is an incredibly important thing that we need to control the autofocus. Once you've had a camera with it, you'll go, well, how on earth did I cope with this before? I don't know why it doesn't work with third-party lenses, but the most important thing is it needs to be added to the flagship camera and the Alpha 7S3. I can live without the focus map, I don't use it, but breathing control is so key. Not having that on the flagship and the Alpha 7S3 is bizarre. We have these fantastic new GM primes, but they breathe like crazy. And once you've used the breathing control, you'll be like, oh, yes, every camera needs to have this, and they really should. We have focus breathing control on right now. Hand. Look at the frame. Good, isn't it? Hand. Now let me turn it off. Hand. Hand. Which one looks better? I think we both know the answer to that. It's this one. Incorrect. It was the one before, with focus breathing control on. We need this in the Alpha 1, the flagship camera, and the Alpha 7S3, and the FX3, please. These people saying you can't put it in the FX3, you can't put it in the A7S3, there's not enough resolution. Nonsense. It's in the FX6, and that has the same sensor. I know I'm not the only person who feels this way. I ran a poll on one of the Facebook groups, and yeah, I mean, obviously it was a no-brainer question, and the people who actually chose the second option is very bizarre, but it just shows you we want our cameras to be updated. It's not just me in little old Brexit land UK, it's in Europe, it's around the world. We all want our Alpha 1s, our Alpha 7S3s and FX3s to be updated. They even want this in Canada.
Why are you dragging me into this mess, Philip? But you're right, I am also frustrated at the way that Sony's been handling, or rather not handling, their firmware updates. Yeah, I'm all in on Sony's system, predominantly because of lenses. You know, you find a system that you think that you're gonna be happy with, and then you start stocking up on lenses, and that's what I've done. And I like Sony's lens collection and also third-party support for lenses, so I'm happy with the fact that I'm using Sony for my needs. But it frustrates me that it's, you know, I can understand it. I understand how there's more money and more development in new cameras than there is in firmware updates. And I also understand that development is hard and that often there's a lag. You know, us as end users and also as reviewers, we see things that we want and then we complain about them, and other users complain about things. And then a new camera comes out and we don't see those things and we think nobody's listening. When in reality, that camera that just came out has probably been planned in its current state for a couple years. So it's already, it has nothing to do with the complaints that we made since then. So there is a big lag, like a big lag. But when it comes to firmware, that's how you can sort of fight back against that lag if you put adequate staff and resources toward developing it. And I'm also okay with not getting everything in every camera, but with Sony, it almost seems like it's working the opposite way. It's a great way to sell a new camera when it's cheaper and you say, hey, look, this one's got everything the more expensive camera does. And we've also often criticized companies for not doing that out of fear of cannibalizing their own market share. So I'm torn because I appreciate when cheaper cameras can do all the things that bigger cameras can do. Maybe that's the loophole there. The what's frustrating about Sony is that it's not that they're making cheaper cameras that can do everything the more expensive cameras can do. It's that the more expensive cameras can't do the things. So that's the only thing that needs to be done, and then we're happy all the way down the line. You want the FX30, you want the FX3, you want the A1, you want the FX6. I'm gonna say the same thing I said in so many videos. It's the flagship. The A1 is the flagship. So if you come up with a good idea after the A1, but not 5 years after, but just months after, you gotta go back and you gotta put it in the A1. And you have to dedicate enough resources to do that right away so that A1 users don't feel left out, and people like me don't feel stupid for getting the A1, recommending the A1, making multiple videos on the A1, but then every other camera that comes out for half as much or a quarter as much have these new features that I also say are great, but they're not in the A1 that I recommend. It makes me look dumb, it just makes everybody look... Yeah, you're right, I am frustrated. So, it just feels like an easy fix. And I think the argument against, with certain limitations, a company like Sony could figure it out. So really, it's the A1. It's their fastest stacked, best thing ever. So put the damn focus breathing compensation and whatever else you want that's in an $1,800 camera, stick it in that camera. Stick it in it. Do it. That's all I have to say. All right. I'm done.
I know it comes down to resources, and I know that new cameras are going to be more of a priority than updating older ones, but people have already spent the money. But it comes down to customer loyalty. It comes down to us knowing that investment is going to last. And we know our investment's going to last when you update the firmware and give them absolutely key features which are purely software based and they can be added. It should not be a side thing of something which, we'll get that done at some point. It should be a priority as much as putting these features into new cameras. I'd also love to have the new layout that we have in the FX30, the FX3 and the R5 for that video. It's so clean and so nice. Can we have that as well? I don't think I'm asking for too much because these aren't massive things. I'm not asking you to add things which none of the cameras have. I'd love to have waveform, DCI, all of these things. I'd love for the LCD to stay on when I have the output display on the monitor. I like all of these things. I know these can be hardware issues. So what I'm asking for are software things I know you can do. You can put it in the Alpha 7.4. You can put it in your flagship, can't you? Surely. Anyway, that's enough ranting. It's got a bit darker now. Camera still looks okay though. It's a really nice camera. Oh dear, this was my review of the FX30. I like it. Way more than I thought I would.